have normalized relationships that feel like constant negotiation, constant emotional management. But a healthy connection should not consistently feel like sustaining disability. Rather than expecting emotional alignment from everyone, we should learn to recognize where alignment naturally exists. It's about learning to see more clearly, to relate more intentionally, and to build relationships from alignment rather than confusion. People find relationships hard to tackle and complicated. And it's because, you see, as with everything in life, the more practice you have, the more understanding. So it's hard to believe that when we really need something, when we really, really want something, that we may be the very one standing in the way of the thing that we want the most. But the reality is that in so many ways, we prevent ourselves from getting that very thing that we want. I want you to know that it's all dependent on how real you are. So we're going to be using the framework that I have created as a synonym, real, as a framework for us to use to dissect and understand this. R is for reality, E is for expectations, A is for acceptance, and L is for live. So we're going to see, let's break this down and see how we can use this to reframe our relationships and to have the blissful relationships that life has at our fingertips for us to grasp. R for reality. The reality is that when most people experience recurring frustration in life and relationships, the instinct is often to look outward first, to look at what others are doing, what they are failing to understand, or what they are failing to give to us. One of the most important shifts with relational clarity begins with the understanding that the quality of the relationships that we have with other people is deeply connected to the quality of the relationships that we have with ourselves, our perception of the world, and the meaning that we assign to the experiences that we have within it, within the world. This orientation is not about blame. It is about clarity. I want you to understand, because many intelligent, self-aware people are navigating life and relationships with assumptions that they have never consciously examined. And those assumptions quietly shape their expectations, their choices, their interpretations of the things that happen, and ultimately the relationships that they build. And so before we talk about our relationships with others, let's begin with our perspective. Your view of yourself and the world shapes your choices. And this is real for every individual. This is real for every single one of us. Am I right or am I wrong? Type in the comments. You're going to use this as we go along. Let's check what we're actually doing in this world and in our relationships and see the connection so that we can see where our blind spots are. Now, everybody operates from an internal framework. How you see yourself, your worth, your role, your responsibilities, your expectations of life. All of these influence what you tolerate, what you pursue, what you ignore, what you excuse, what you fight for, and what you're expecting from people around you. Many people believe that they're simply making decisions while never realizing that those decisions are being filtered through deeply conditioned beliefs about love, about connection, about sacrifice, about approval, about belonging, about conflict, and about self-worth. People enter relationships with other people, but they're not going alone. They're going along with a whole entire internal worldview. And unless that worldview is examined, unless those perspectives that were coming along are examined, patterns continue to repeat in our relationships and we'll never know why, even when intentions are good. So this means that based on our worldview, we now go on to the second letter in real. Remember the framework we're working with? Real. E is the second letter, expectation. So our worldview is what creates our expectations. And so using our worldview, using this internal compass that we have, we then project that and use that to create distorted expectations. And the reason why I call it distorted expectations is because we have these expectations of other people and things around us based on our own internal compass, which will be of no significance to the people around us and to all the things around us. And one of the most common causes of relational disappointments is projection, because we're projecting all the things that we have in our internal compass onto these people, projecting capacity onto them, Projection happens when we unconsciously assume that other people think like us, that they value what we value, that they prioritize what we prioritize, and that they would naturally respond in the way that we would respond to something. And when they don't do that, we feel disappointed, we feel betrayed, and we even feel angry and triggered. Remember, when we are giving, give what we ourselves would appreciate without it occurring to us unless we're mindful that the other person may not appreciate what we appreciate because they're coming from a whole completely different walk of life. They've had different experiences in life and they have a different outlook and a different attitude to life. They have different priorities and values and they may not value the same thing as us. And automatically, when they don't value what we value, we feel betrayed. Where do we get the license to feel betrayed? Do we actually have that license? So then we expect consideration because we're a considerate person. We expect effort because we're a person who puts in effort. We're willing to make effort. We expect a person to be reflective because we are a reflective person. We believe that this is the way that life should be. This is the way that an adult should process things. But others are operating from an entirely different internal compass, from different experiences, from different priorities, from different values and emotional structures. And when projections replace discernment, we begin building expectations that are unfounded. We begin building expectations around imagined alignment rather than actual alignment. And this is where the confusion begins. Not because people are necessarily malicious, not because the other person is necessarily malicious, but because assumptions were mistaken for compatibility. So there we've already shot ourselves in the foot. And then when there is misalignment, when a person isn't willing or wanting to come along with us, then that is mistaken for rejection. But it isn't rejection. Another important shift is understanding the difference between rejection and misalignment. Not everyone who does not come along is rejecting us. Sometimes they simply do not share our priorities. They don't share our values. They don't share our perspective. They don't share our pace. They don't share our direction. And that's all there is to it. And that is important to understand because many people internalize difference as personal invalidation. And then they begin questioning themselves simply because another person does not agree, reciprocate, understand, or desire the same things. Some people simply do not belong in the same structure. And it's important to pay attention so that we can notice this earlier. However, even when some people notice it earlier, this presents another problem. People then begin to try to create alignment when we have already seen misalignment. So the question now becomes, is this alignment? That's what we should ask, rather than how do I make this work anyway? And as soon as we do that, we land on the third letter, A, acceptance or agreement. Agree to disagree. Many people find it hard to simply accept disagreements as just that. Agree to disagree, accept that we disagree, and allow life to go on. Instead, they subconsciously feel determined to help the other person to understand and agree with their own point of view without realizing that this person coming from a different walk of life, if they begin to try to make us agree with their own point of view, we won't like it. And yet, that's what we're doing with the other person. And then feeling betrayed and angry that they're refusing to understand our point of view. But if you were to just accept, okay, this is the way this person says this, and that's all there is to it, life just goes on. But the reason why that is hard to do is because once we do that, we must obey the principle of two cannot work together except they agree. But remember that somebody wants something from this person. You want something from this relationship. You have built an expectation. There is a role that you want fulfilled by this person in your life, and that is the role that you're holding on to. So now, without you knowing, you're not actually holding on to this person. You're holding on to this person for what you have planned for them to fulfill in your life. So that thing that you're planning for them to fulfill in your life, that is the thing that you must understand other ways to go about fulfilling it in your life without this person, but that's what you don't want to do. So now we're stuck in a place where we're unable to accept that this person is not agreeing, this person does not validate something about us. That begins to become a problem and we begin to feel less than. We feel like we must help them to see that they need to validate whatever it is about us because they are wrong in their opinion of us. But it doesn't matter because their opinion is not automatic truth. It shouldn't be a cause of concern to us, but many people move through life unconsciously allowing others to define them. A criticism is received as identity. A misunderstanding becomes self-doubt. A lack of appreciation becomes proof of my inadequacy. And yet, every opinion people hold about you is filtered through their own expectations, their own limitations, their own preferences, their own understanding of life, their own wants sometimes, their own priorities, their own worldview. Now, this does not mean feedback is useless. But discernment is necessary. And one of the most destabilizing ways to live is constantly reshaping your life around external interpretations for people who neither understand you, nor value what you have, nor value who you fundamentally are, or are even dedicated to misunderstanding you. Because, get this, not because of you specifically, but because they are dedicated to what they believe. So these people cannot appreciate your worldview. They are dedicated to their own worldview. And yet here you are, reshaping yourself and your life to suit their own interpretation of life. But we're not robots. We're all unique. We're operating from different and unique internal workings. Clarity requires learning to separate perception from truth. Alignment matters more than universal agreement. Not everyone is meant to understand us. Not everyone is meant to work with you. Not everyone is meant to value what you value. And much relational exhaustion comes from repeatedly trying to explain yourself to people who are fundamentally committed to misunderstanding you because they're dedicated to their worldview. It's not about you. So, this does not make them evil. Neither does it make us superior. It simply means alignment matters. Healthy relationships aren't built on forcing universal agreement. They are built on compatible values, compatible priorities, mutual willingness to understand one another. And you know what happens when we persuade? When we persuade people, they might even buckle under our persuasion. They might agree to things that they are not internally programmed or able to agree to. And then they go along with us only for a certain distance, and then they still revert because they never really were convinced about that thing that we persuaded them for. So we shouldn't persuade people, not allow people to persuade us. We need to know that we come to a conviction, people come to a conviction, whatever you're convinced about, what you have conviction for, even if people are dragging you, if people are dragging you and tearing you, your belief stands strong. Because you're convinced about it, you don't have doubts, your belief does not waver. But something that someone else convinces you about, the slightest breeze that blows, you know, you say to yourself, this wasn't real anyway, because you never believed in it, because it was in contradiction to your own strong internal workings. So rather than expecting emotional alignment from everyone, we should learn to recognize where alignment naturally exists. That changes everything. Effort is normal. Relationships do require care, but there is a difference between nurturing connection and continuously competing for incompatibility. Trying to constantly manage every aspect of your relationship is a sign of structural misalignment. Many people have normalized relationships that feel like constant negotiation, constant explanations, constant repairing, constant convincing, constant emotional management. But a healthy connection should not consistently feel like sustaining disability. And we know it too. And that is why this container exists. Sometimes people aren't even able to stop themselves, even when they know it. Even very, like I said earlier, even very self-aware and intelligent people. But because the mind muscle training does not exist prior to this time, it becomes hard to manage this. And instead of convincing people, there's actually a way to do it. You give them situations where they have to examine themselves to actually be able to come to the realization of what they truly are convinced about. And that is part of what we learn in the mind muscle training. It is psychological. We don't want to put anybody under pressure to do anything, but we want to help everyone to see clarity, to get clarity, to know exactly where they stand, so that when we're making decisions that are true to who we are, our inner workings, and who we really are and where we're trying to get to. Relationships do require care, but there's a difference between nurturing a connection and continuously compensating for incompatibility. Where structure is healthy, many things flow naturally. Consideration flows naturally. Reciprocity flows naturally. Willingness flows naturally. Accountability and emotional safety. That is because we're congruent, working towards a unified goal, working towards a common vision because we have a common belief. But where these things are consistently absent, more effort rarely resolves the deeper issue. So I invite you to the last letter, L. L for live life. Living the life that you are here to live. Without those things, even highly self-aware people can repeatedly enter exhausting dynamics while still believing that they are trying their best. And this is why clarity matters more than effort alone. So our goal, both here in MNT and in life generally, is not to force relationships to work. It's not to force endless emotional labor. It is not to live endless emotional labor. It is not to master persuasion. It is not to become endlessly accommodating. The goal is forming relationships that are actually structurally capable of working at their core. Relationships where understanding is mutual, care is natural, communication is productive, and alignment exists from the outset. And you have a third party, that is us inside here, overlooking what's happening on both sides, at both ends. And we can see where you may be overgiving, overstretching, overhoping, so that we can caution on that, and then we can go back to the drawing board and see what's to change here and there. We can actually interpret what is going on from both sides so that we can see where there is real structural alignment and what needs to shift. Because when people learn to see more clearly, they choose more clearly, they relate more clearly, and they build more intentionally. And from there, relationship alignment becomes less accidental. Now, start your journey to the life that you want by beginning the 7-day recalibration process. It only requires you to pause and reflect for a few moments each day. And the link is below. I'm going to leave it in the description box under this video. It will open your eyes. It is life changing because when you understand, you will suddenly realize how happiness has always been at your fingertips. It's always been with you, but you were looking in the wrong place. If you go looking for something in the wrong place, you are not going to find it because it simply isn't there. Now, if this video has created a shift for you already, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone that you know will need to see this and begin to understand this. If there's any promise that I will give to you, it is that your life will change once you begin to apply the MNT process. Thank you for watching this video. If this is your first time meeting me, I am glad to make your acquaintance. I'm glad to get to know you. I wish you love. Bye.